Hello, and we're back, and we'd like to introduce Max Igan. Max, good evening to you. How are you doing?
I'm good. Good morning for me, though. It's a different time of day over here, but I'm very well.
It's very early over there. Max, I'm sure there's a lot of people, our listeners, have heard you and your broadcasts and your website and your documentaries. We actually have one of your documentaries on our website as well. Very, very good, the Awakening documentary that you did. But for people who haven't really heard who Max Igan is, can you give us a quick roundup as to your background and how you got involved in this?
Well, I've been kind of involved in it most of my life. It was a hobby for me for many, many years. And then, as with many people, when 9/11 happened, I began to take it a little bit more seriously and started speaking out and making documentary films, and figured it was time to get the message out to people. But I've spent most of my life as a travelling musician, actually, and I've travelled around and met lots of people and been able to look at life sort of from a different perspective to most people. Being a musician, you kind of live on the outside of society. I just became aware at a very early age that nothing was the way they told us. So, like I said, it was kind of a hobby for me. But with what's been going on in the last 10 years or 12 years, it's gotten very, very serious. And so, like many other people, I've just been speaking out as much as I can, trying to alert people to the global situation and what we're really facing here. Because, we're sort of going to hell in a handbasket, really. So, I think we can turn it around pretty easily as well if people can just wake up to what's going on. But it's difficult for people to get their head around.
And that's half the battle. Now, Max, I know you're a broadcaster and you have your own show, I believe, down in Australia as well. What's happening over there? Can you give us a heads up on what's happening? We were on the Vince Eastwood show on Tuesday, and we've been on Vince show a couple of times, and it's great getting an idea of what's happening in particular countries. So what's happening in your neck of the woods?
Well, Australia is one of the countries that seems to have survived the financial meltdown that most of the rest of the world's gone through. But they seem to be fixing that at the moment so that we don't survive at all. Julia Gillard's just decided to use most of Australia's economy to bail out Europe or Greece or something. I don't know. She wants to give all our money to Europe now anyway, which would set us up for a nice financial crash probably next year, I think. Most of the country's been turned into a mine at the moment, though. As with many countries, fracking has taken over. We've got most of our food bowl has just been signed over to foreign interests. This is a place called the Darling Downs in Queensland. That's earmarked for 30 open-cut mines. Most of the place is being mined and fracked, and they're just extracting as many resources from the place as they can. It all ties in with Agenda 21, getting people into the cities because they're destroying the groundwater, so it will be impossible for people to live in the country. It's getting very, very on the edge over here. And it's happening right across the country. I've actually just been across the country and I've seen some of the mines that they're putting in around the place. And the people are just being discarded left, right and centre. The government has no regard for the people at all. And of course we've been disarmed over here, so there's not a lot anybody can do about it. But yeah, the country's basically been turned into a mine. That's what I can see anyway.
That's incredible. We are having the same problems over here. We're having fracking taking place down in the Lough Basin, and we've asked somebody to come on the show to talk about it and what's happening, what's involved. But unfortunately, the person who we spoke to said, oh, well, we really don't want to come on your show because you're just a bunch of conspiracy theorists and it actually affect our plight, And I thought, well, that's very nice. Thanks very much. I wouldn't call ourselves conspiracy theorists. We have gone through this on a number of occasions, and the people who we do get on and speak to are people with real life experience and documented proof in a majority of cases. So that was just kind of narrow-minded on their side, but we seem to be experiencing exactly what you're experiencing. I don't know whether you've heard about the Irish news, but we didn't have a referendum regarding bailing out the banks over here, and during the week we've just given the banks, which is the senior bondholders, which this debt was unguaranteed anyway, 700 million to them. So Ireland is really, really going through a bad stage at the moment, and we have another budget coming in which is going to affect even more people. Are you having the same thing in Australia where people are losing their homes and struggling and everything else?
Yeah, not as bad over here yet, but it will be. I mean, with this bailout that Julia Gillard's got planned for Europe, yeah, it will get very bad. But I mean, people are managing to keep their head above water here at the moment. But it's kind of artificially propped up. It's not going to last very long at all. And the fracking, everything that's going on around the world, and it's like the whole place is absolutely being strip mined. And what I'm realising is that, and I've been speaking about it a lot lately on the shows, is that there's a trust agreement that exists between ourselves and the government, but it's a personal thing. You know, I have a trust agreement that exists between myself and the government, so do you. So I can only deal with my perspective and my trust with them. It's an individual thing. That's why it's very, very difficult to find a leader in amongst our populations everywhere. I mean, I could stand up and make my stand against the government, but ultimately it will only work for me. Everybody has to do it themselves. It's a personal thing because it's a trust agreement. It's a trust arrangement that we have with the government. And I've been helping people understand that a little bit and the need for them to actually stand up and put our public trustees back in their correct position in the social hierarchy, which is that of trustees. That's what we're missing out on. That's what we're forgetting. And that's where the remedy lies. A lot of people are looking for remedies at law and remedies in the legal system, and there is no legal remedy for anything that's happening. It's got to be looked at from a perspective of trust. And when people can get their heads around that, that's how we're going to heal things, I think. And I've been really looking at that a lot lately and trying to bring that to a lot of people. And so have a lot of others, like Dean Clifford in Canada. Many people have been going down the trust law rabbit hole now, and it seems to be working.
Can you, well, talking about Dean, funny enough, Dean was supposed to be on the show a couple of weeks ago, and we didn't hear anything from Dean. And then the other day, I received an email from Dean saying, sorry he couldn't come on the show, but he was actually, they locked him up for 19 days in jail.
Yeah, I heard about that. I haven't actually spoken to him since then. Briefly, he said he was in jail for 19 days, but apparently he beat the charges. They just kind of held him there waiting for trial or something.
That's right, yeah. So we'll get Dean back on and we'll have a chat with Dean. But for people who don't know, I found what you were talking about the trust very interesting, because we are looking at all different ways over here, from the Freeman movement or the sovereign movement, looking at ways to, and I wouldn't say circumvent the system, but just being sovereign and getting away from this commercial legalese world that we're all kind of tied up in. You know, parking tickets, speeding tickets, toll tickets, all this kind of commercial world. And obviously there's two different people, the flesh and blood human being and the actual straw man. Could you give us a 101 on the trusts and what they are and how you go about setting them up, really?
Well, the thing is, with what's going on with all the tickets and all the fines and stuff we're getting, it's because our governments are broke because of this financial system. They've got to find more and more ways of extracting money out of the people to try to pay their debt. But the trust stuff, a lot of it is in your heart. A lot of it is basically knowing who and what you are. I mean, if you look at your birth certificate, and Dean will explain all this too, if you look at your birth certificate, what you see is that it's actually a three-part agreement. It's an agreement between your parents, yourself, and the government. So therefore it's a trust agreement because it's got three parties. A contract has two parties. This has three parties, so it's a trust agreement. It's signed by the government, and that shows obligation by the government. So what you find when you look at your birth certificate is there's a legal person on the top of your birth certificate. That legal person is, well, you could call it a trust, you could call it a presumption of law, you could call it anything you want, really, a corporation, whatever you want. But that legal person is how you interact with their corporate world. You use that legal person to do it. Because ultimately, you're not the legal person, you're man. You know, you have a legal person, but it's not you. It's just a label that you can use. So getting your head around that is a big thing for most people as well, to understand that they're not actually the name. You know, their name is man, your name is man, but you have a legal person. So when you look at that legal person, what you find is that you're the sole shareholder of that legal person. You own all the equity in that name, and therefore you have the right to appoint yourself administration rights over that legal person, over that name. And all law that is attempted to be forced upon you, like all statute law, this is just statute. It's not actual law because there's no injured party. In a breach of an actual law, there needs to be an injured party. But in a breach of a statute, there doesn't. And you'll find that statutes are simply government regulations. They're just statute regulations that somebody wrote down on a piece of paper. So it's all contract law. because all of man's law is contract law. So because you own all the equity in that legal person, in that name, if the government is going to attempt to enforce statute law against you, you need to see the contract. You need to understand that you're dealing with contract law. And I've gone in court cases and gone in and stood in this name, stood in man, who I am, and they've got no recourse. They've got nothing they can possibly do because it's true. I mean, you own all the equity in the name. If they're claiming they have administration rights over your name, you need to see a contract, basically. But as I said, this is a personal thing. I mean, I can stand in this myself. I can go to court. I can take the system on and stand in who I am myself, but I can't do it for you. And I can't really provide a template or a piece of paper or a way you can free yourself. A lot of people have been asking me for that. What's a template? Because I've said to them, and Dean said to them, you can actually send off an affidavit to the Attorney General or whoever it is, the head of your legal department in your country, and you can establish your freedom. And a lot of people want to be able to do this, but then they're not prepared to stand in it. And you have to be able to stand in it. Ultimately, it's in your heart. And I can tell you how to send the forms off, but if you don't know that you're free in your heart, then you might just get yourself in trouble. Personally, I don't need to send any forms off. I don't need to fill out anything that they tell me I need to fill out to establish my freedom. Because if I have to fill out their forms that they're telling me to establish my freedom, then how free am I? You know, why do I have to participate in their system at all? I mean, it's kind of the attitude, well, look, I'm here, I'm man, I own all the equity in this name, who are you people? And show me proof of claim that you have any jurisdiction over me at all. Let's establish that before we can move forward. Because if you've dragged me into your court, you need to first establish jurisdiction. And as I own all the equity in this name, you know, show me how you've got jurisdiction. Don't you claim to be basing your legal system on the laws of God? Well, that's your Bible, and according to your Bible, God gave man dominion over the earth, and I'm man. So who are you people? Let's establish that straight away. And if you can stand in that, then they've got no recourse. They've got nowhere to go from there.
Yeah, that's. I mean, we've been looking just before you actually came on. I was just saying that to the listeners. I got Gartner's Dictionary of Modern Legal Usage, which I was recommended to get, and I was just talking about the statutes and acts which they throw at us. Now, a statute, according to that dictionary, carries the force of law, but it's not law. And if it carries the force of law, it means that only if it's consented by the governed. So if we don't consent to it, it doesn't apply to us.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I've gone into court and I've said, I'm confused as to why I'm here. Is this not a court of law? And the judge will say, yes, it's a court of law. And I say, well, could you please tell me which law I've broken? And they can't, because they can't name a statute as a law. If a judge names a statute as a law, then the judge has committed fraud on the bench. So if you can establish that straight away, as soon as you get in there, you know, establish your administration rights and ask them to tell you what actual law you've broken, and you'll find that they can't. And if they're going to challenge your administration rights, well, that's fine. They can challenge it, but they just need to provide proof of claim. Because you go to court, it's all based on presumption. So I've come to this court presuming that I'm the administrator of my own legal person. If you're claiming otherwise, that's fine. Just show me proof of claim and we can move on. But
okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but they can't. They can't provide you proof of claim because, as I said, you're the sole shareholder. Do you remember ever giving these people administration rights? Of course not. And so they can't. They've got nowhere to go from there.
And what about, you know, I went down to the local courthouse, Max, and I was very disappointed to see what I saw. You know, it was very draconian court. People, public gallery, and there's people going up one after the other in front of the judge. And so we went outside for a break, and I spoke to a solicitor there, and I said, is this a de facto court or a court de jure? And he said, it's a bit of both. And I said, but how can it be a bit of both? It has to be one or the other. And apparently he said, well, if the court gets out of bed, if the judge gets out of bed on one side and it's a good day, he'll fine you. But if he gets out of bed on the other side, you'll go to jail. How can that system work? It's just incredible. I don't know whether you have the same issues down there.
Oh, we do, mate. You do. I mean, you'll find these people just enact their repressed biological urges upon the people that come to their court, basically. You know, if their wife was nice to them the night before, then you might get off leniently. And that's the way it is. So there is no actual formula that they use. It just depends on what mood the judge is in.